WNST, Towson baits Maryland for Ohio as the Orioles are headed off to Cleveland to take on the Indians this weekend, and of course the Ravens. As we've all waited 8 months now, 9 months through all the injuries, all the Joe Flacco stuff, we're actually going to see a real football game on Sunday at Paul Brown Stadium in Cincinnati. This guy laced them up for the Cincinnati Bengals for many moons. Back in the 1970s and early 1980s, he is now, and it's incredible to him, 32 years as the Bengals color analyst in the Queen City of Cincinnati, out of Wakefield, Mass, and Syracuse, but we don't hold that against him. We welcome Dave Lappin back onto the program. How's it been, man? I haven't had you on in months and months and months, and certainly both of these franchises with so many question marks. This is a pretty good football game on Sunday. I have no idea how this is going to go.
I know it's pretty remarkable. It's almost like, you know, the old saying goes, can't tell the players without a program. Man, so many different players from last year for both of these franchises. But the core players, a lot of the core players remain the same. But man, the depth of the rosters looks so different than it did in the last game of the season last year.
For you with the offensive line, and this is, as they would say, this is your business, the O-line. Thoughts about these changes? I mean, it wasn't great last year. Dalton was running for his life. I've seen Zeitler. I've seen, Whitworth for years, and certainly many in Cincinnati might have wanted to build a statue to him had they won a couple of playoff games and somehow managed a parade around there. But this is a time of swirling change, and then Burfict and Pac-Man not being there on the defense. This is going to be a different version of the Bengals, and I feel like we've seen a very, and I know you and I talk a couple times, you're a very consistent version of the Malalugas and the Peckos and a whole bunch of these guys that are gone now.
You're right. A lot of guys have moved on. Whitworth, unquestioned leader of the offense. Pecco, unquestioned leader of the defense. So not only were they, solid players on the football field for a decade plus, but they, in the locker room, in the community, they were just extraordinary. So other guys are going to have to pick it up. And I don't think it's going to be any one guy. I think it's going to be the old theory, everybody do a little so nobody has to do a lot. And big holes there, at the left tackle position, Cedric Ogbuehi is going to be tested. And he had problems handling bull rush guys that can convert power to speed to power. And Suggs is one of the best bull rushers in the league. So he will get tested immediately in game one. And at the right tackle position, Jake Fisher, both of these guys are extremely athletic, but the physicality, the real power rushers seem to be the ones that give them the most difficulty. So we'll see how they hold up. In my mind, Nestor, the whole season hinges on the offensive line, particularly the tackle play. I mean, if the tackles play well enough, they could win 10 football games. If the tackles struggle, the team will struggle to win 8 football games. I think that offensive line is going to be under the microscope, heavy scrutiny in the entire season. I do think as the season wears on, they'll play better. And they've had their moments, good moments. They've had bad moments. They've had moments in between. But I think what coaches look for is consistency. Can I count on this group to play at this level week in and week out? And I'm not sure the coaching staff can look at that offensive line and say, I know what I'm going to get out of them every week.
Well, we are a box of chocolates around here. I mean, we haven't had our quarterback stand upright yet during training camp. They brought Macklin, and they've had 2 practices together back in June. I mean, it's been really sticky around here, and I know from the Cincinnati perspective, the notion that they're going to run the ball, that they drafted Mixon despite, him being the kind of player we could not have around here. And I guess at some point he's going to become the bell cow for the offense there. But in Bernard and Hill, they bring back guys that have run the ball well. But the offensive line, as you know, is so key in that if they can run the ball well, the Bengals are probably going to have a pretty good season, right?
Yeah, I agree, Nestor. And what that does, too, is it takes pressure off your pass protection issues. If you're running the football well, you can play action pass. And you're not in down and distance situations where you have to, set up in the pocket and protect the quarterback taking a 5-step, 7-step, 3-step drop, whatever the case may be. You're basically blocking like it's a run play, and it's maximum protection. You've got tight ends in doing the same thing. I mean, you're max protecting, and the quarterback's going to get the ball out of his hand really quickly with, hopefully time and space. And that's the key, not only time, but giving the quarterback space. Andy Dalton, is not statuesque in the pocket like Joe Flacco. He's not a 6'5", 6'6" guy. Andy's 6'2", so pressure in his face and pressure around him, it's like he's thrown out of a hole. And one way to remedy those problems is, have that solid running game And then, also there's easier places to take advantage of defenses' voids in their coverage because of the play action pass. The linebackers at least have to hesitate and freeze for a second, if not come downhill. Usually you get space between linebackers, safeties that you can utilize in that play action pass game. So I think it's going to be really big, the fact that get that running game established and be able to anchor people at the line of scrimmage a little bit.
Longtime Bengals color analyst on the radio broadcast, Dave Lapham, joining us here from Cincinnati. Of course, 1 o'clock game time there for Joe Flacco and the Ravens going back down there in a place that we know so well. We see you guys all the time. Certainly it feels like both of these franchises are chasing the Steelers most of the time, Dave. But in the case of A.J. Green, I mean, we managed to miss him. And anytime he's not there, and I know with Burfict and Jones, and we'll get to that side of the ball in a minute, but with A.J. Green, the Ravens have managed to avoid him a couple of times. He is the ultimate Raven killer, and I think part of what the Ravens have tried to do, and Ozzie and Eric, and developing the team and drafting on the back end of Marlon Humphrey is the ball can't go over your head defensively, and A.J. Green was among a handful of guys that over the last 2 or 3 years has really exposed the Ravens. And when you go back, you get on a plane and you fly home and you've lost, you look up and say, well, it was really about that guy in that play.
You're right. I mean, against the Ravens in 8 games, A.J. is averaging little over 5 catches a game, but 91 yards a game, averaging 17.7 per reception, 6 touchdown catches in those 8 games, and a lot of them have been the catalyst to fourth quarter comebacks. He's made big plays at key times in the fourth quarter of football games. He and Andy Dalton have had 3 fourth quarter comeback wins, against the Baltimore Ravens. Those guys being the primary factor. So I do admire what Ozzie Newsome has done, though. He missed on some guys in the draft, so he said, okay, let me go out in free agency, and I'll get some veteran guys. And he goes out and he gets Weddle, he gets Jefferson, he gets Brandon Carr, and they spent the 5th most of any team in the NFL on the back end of their defense, salary cap-wise. So Ozzie is about as smart a football guy as there is, and he knew that he had to handle it another way if one way didn't work out, and he did. And, I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic, that they're much different in the back end than they were even the very end of the season last year, that last game again.
In the case of their offense, obviously Dalton, and you mentioned his size and the difference of getting in protection. Where are you with him? Because we sit here day after day, year after year, evaluating Joe Flacco, who, by the way, led a parade through our town at one point, did really nothing but get the team to the playoffs the first 5 years he's been here. The defense has had some suspect, and he has actually won games around here that the defense has allowed the likes of A.J. Green or Odell Beckham or Desmond, the balls to go over their heads after he won the game in New England in the playoffs 3 years ago. And, Tom Brady came down and won it back. And, in the case of Flacco, he will never get the respect that he probably warrants and deserves around here. Now he's got this back issue. We're going to see how that turns out, and I think we all have some fear about that on Sunday. But I know one thing. He's going to show up on Sunday, and he's been there before. He's not going to be nervous. Now, whether he gets up from the first hit or not, I don't know. But we don't have enough appreciation for him around here, and I probably would say the same thing for an Eli Manning or those guys that aren't on that shelf with Brady and Aaron Rodgers and maybe even Roethlisberger, you'd say, or Drew Brees, who are considered the elite quarterbacks. Boy, Dalton has been an incredible gift to that franchise there on the back end of Carson Palmer, just wanting out and willing his way as the most influential guy in the organization out of that organization. But Dalton's been comfortable there, but this thing for him and for Marvin and for Burfict and for all of them, they've never won a playoff game. And until that happens, Andy Dalton can win 13 games here during the regular season. That won't matter.
You've hit the nail right on the head. 5 straight seasons, his first 5 years, he took the Bengals to the playoffs. Like Joe Flacco, a 5-year stretch. There's less than a handful of guys in NFL history that have done it in their first 5 years.
Hey, by the way, Mariota didn't do it. Right. Winston didn't do it. Cam Newton did. Peyton Manning didn't do it. I mean, that is really an incredible thing for all these quarterbacks that come in every year to think they're going to spend the first 5 years in the play. I mean, that's a special thing for your organization, but it's an incredibly special thing for the quarterback himself, I think.
I agree with you. And the thing about Andy Dalton is he's a winner. I mean, he's won at every level. He was 18-1 in high school as a starting quarterback, 42-7 at TCU. Andy Dalton had his first losing season ever in sports. I'm talking Pee Wee football, the Little League baseball. He'd never had a losing season. 6-9-1 was his first one. He'd never lost 3 games in a row at any level of sports competition until last season. So Andy Dalton has been in different environments, different coaches, different systems, and continued to win. So there's got to be something to be said for that. He's got 56 wins in his first 6 seasons as a quarterback. That's pretty good. I mean, that's getting it done. That's between 9 and 10 wins a year. You're on the cusp of the playoffs or in the playoffs. With that kind of a record. So that's the bottom line. And everybody aspires to have the great ones like you're talking about. But what about those franchises that don't have anything? If you've got a functional quarterback that you have confidence in that can win you football games, particularly if you surround him, with enough weapons and give him the protection necessary and all that sort of thing. I mean, you're in high cotton, and I think the Bengals feel comfortable with Andy Dalton and the Ravens feel comfortable with Joe Flacco. The interesting thing to me, Nestor, is Joe Flacco, and I've talked to Kenny Anderson, Phil Simms, a bunch of veteran quarterbacks about this with Joe Flacco, having not practiced until Saturday was his first practice. I know he's played a ton of football games. He's won a Super Bowl. I mean, he took his team on an incredible run that year and everything. But when you've coming back from an injury and you haven't been out there at full speed, to me, it's almost like a go-kart, on the Autobahn. It's like, man, that's going to take me a little while to adjust to that speed. And every one of the veteran quarterbacks has said there is going to be a little bit of an adjustment period. How long that is it a series? Is it a quarter? Is it a half? But there will be some sort of an adjustment when it's full speed and those bullets are flying like that. Even if his back feels pretty well, physically he's able to come loose with the football.
Big game on Sunday in Cincinnati, Ohio. Dave Lapham, 32 years now with the color broadcast after spending so many years with the Cincinnati Bengals and working a little USFL. How often do you get asked about the USFL these days, Dave?
Quite a bit, because I played for the President of the United States, played for Donald Trump. So there's been a lot of, you played with the Jones, you played for the presidency. I did. So there's been, since Mr. Trump was elected, the president, since he was elected, I've had more USFL discussion than probably in the past few years.
I know Jeff Pearlman's working on a book on the USFL because I follow him on Twitter, and he was running around and all this. And every story I've ever read is that Trump wrecked the league and the dollar settlement. I remember where I was when the dollar settlement happened a couple of years later.
Right.
I remember reading about it in a newspaper in Jamaica on the beach 30 years ago. You were such a part of that thing, and that's as close as anything's ever come to competing. Vince McMahon played his little "he hate me" game for a minute and a half, and you've been involved in this league your whole life. I mean, you're 65 years old. This has been your life. It really is an incredible thing, this kickoff weekend and the league and the politics and the Kaepernick story and how the league is a mirror for our society in so many bad ways, but also in so many good ways.
Yeah, and one of the best ways I can think of here currently, J.J. Watt. I mean, the NFL platform and J.J. Watt.
Sure.
He starts, try to raise money. His goal is $200,000. He puts $100,000 in, and it's up to over $18 million. Are you kidding me? Only the NFL, with that type of platform created because of the publicity and the positivity and the popularity of the league, and J.J. Watt being, one of the faces of the National Football League.
Oh, and by the way, a dude just shooting a little Instagram video in his office, in his bedroom, that's a minute and a half long, and a week later it's $18 million. That is an incredible, incredible thing, right?
It's mind-boggling. It really is. I mean, only in America, and only with the love of sports that people have it. People always say, sports is a unifier. It's like, it doesn't matter the race, the religion, the creed, the culture, whatever. Locker rooms are, like a mishmash of all of it, and fans are a mishmash of all of it. And this proves it. I mean, it cuts through every single dynamic, every single, group that you want to talk about. There's some portion of it that has an affinity for the NFL and for sports in general, and this proves it.
You spent a lot of time with Marvin Lewis. You know of my affection for him and his tolerance of me. And certainly the Bengals have had incredible tolerance there. But also on the outside, the noise is, I can't believe Marvin Lewis still has a job. He hasn't won a playoff game. Dude, you've been around there since, 1974, for crying out loud. He's the best thing that's ever happened there, and that's just not my affection for him. And we are way closer to the end than to the beginning at this point. I think everyone would admit that. And I know he is without contract at the end of the year. This might be the last time I come in and have a sandwich with Marvin in Cincinnati, right?
It could be. It could be. I think if they get off to a good start and have, who knows, with Mike Brown, they get off to a good start, he may decide to extend him right there. Or he, at this point in time, we probably will let it play out. But I'll tell you what, Nestor, we both obviously know and admire what Marvin Lewis is all about, not just from a football standpoint, but a humanity standpoint and everything else. But the guy, here's the thing that I say. 35 years, the first 35 years of the franchise, there were 7 playoff teams. In Marvin Lewis's first 14 years, there were 7 playoff teams. 50% of his seasons as a head coach, they made the playoffs. Now they're 0-7, unfortunately, in the playoffs. They have not won a playoff game. But to get to the playoffs half the time as a head coach, I don't care if you coach for 5 years in the NFL. If you've made the playoffs 2 times in your 5 years in the NFL as a head coach, you've done a damn good job. So for him to get the team in the playoffs 7 times in 14 years, it's the best run in franchise history, obviously. Now, the decade of the 80s was the best decade. 2 teams went to the Super Bowl, didn't win it, lost to the 49ers twice at the beginning and toward the end of the decade. But for a 15-year stretch, this is as good as they've ever had.
He is Dave Lapham. He is in Cincinnati, Ohio, where the Ravens are going down trying to steal the season opener here in a game that I think both franchises kind of feeling their way around all of this, and certainly a huge benefit for the Ravens. We talk about A.J. Green not being there and what that meant for the Ravens last year. The Vontaze Burfict thing is really particularly problematic for the Bengals, I guess, in a lot of ways. As much as on the outside it may feel divisive, and we all remember the Pittsburgh game and them giving the game away there, and I know you remember it, Marvin remembers it. Inside that locker room, he's pretty popular, right? And more than that, he's probably your best football player.
He's the best defensive football player. You could argue that A.J. Green's probably the best offensive football player, but he's a rare talent. And this year, he had gotten himself into the best shape that he's been in since 2013 when he went to the Pro Bowl. Realize, Nestor, that's the last year he's played 16 games, whether it's injury, suspension, whatever the case may be. He has not played 16 games. The Bengals have gone 15-8 without him in the starting lineup. He's missed that many games since 2013, that Pro Bowl season, but he's down in the 250s instead of the 270s. I mean, he was able to condition his body. He was playing unbelievably dynamic football. I mean, his IQ, football IQ, kind of the Ray Lewis syndrome, to see it before it happens and not waste any steps in getting there. And, understanding calling plays out because of his knowledge of the game and film study, and calling a high percentage of plays out by formation, spoofing the opponent that way like the great ones have done. Vontaze Burfict provides all that for the Bengals. He is their catalyst in the huddle. He's the unquestioned leader of the defense, like having another coach in the field. They're absent of all that. Vinny Ray is a very solid, fine, intelligent football player. He'll tell you, I'm not Vontaze Burfict. And Jordan Evans is a rookie out of Oklahoma. How the hell can you expect him to play like Vontaze Burfict? So there's definitely, they'll definitely feel the loss of Vontaze Burfict for 3 games. There's no doubt.
Dave, any predictions on the Bengals from you this season? I mean, are you relatively optimistic of double-digit wins? You think they can get to 10 or 11 wins this year with this outfit right now, with the perfect issues and with their offensive line?
That's the two deals right there, and I think the offensive line is the constant one for 16 games. I mean, that's, to me, it's going to be under my microscope, telescope, every scope I can think of. Going to be just checking that action out, and I am of the school that thinks that they play solidly. They have enough weapons, and they can play good enough defense, to win 10 football games. If that offensive line struggles, I don't care who you've got. You can have Hall of Famers at every skilled position group. If the offensive line's getting overwhelmed and they don't have a chance to operate, it's a moot point. And they'll struggle to go 500. So I do think it is all about the O-line.
Well, man, it is all about the O-line because you were an O-lineman, right? I mean, that's you have to preach that. That's part of your. That's part of keeping all. It's sort of a pact amongst you guys, right?
Yeah, no question. Here's an interesting tidbit for you. In this football game, all football games at any level, obviously, this is a factor. But in this game, it is unbelievable. It's all about respecting and taking care of the football. In Marvin Lewis's tenure here, there's been 7 games where the turnover ratio has been even. The Bengals lead that 5-2. But in the 21 other football games, the team that had the plus turnover ratio is 19-2. The Bengals are 10-0. The Ravens are 9-2 when they finished in the plus turnover department. And obviously the other way around. Ravens, they finished minus. They're 0-10. Bengals are 2-9. It's all about the football in this matchup.
Well, that's the thing that worries me about Flacco, Dave. Just the timing and communication more than anything else. It's not that Flacco's going to stink or that his timing might be off. He might literally not be throwing the ball where people are going. And all of that being said, we have a veteran guy who's taken a lot of mental reps over the last 5 weeks. I don't think he's disengaged, even though he's not out there on the practice field walking around showing his back off. I think he knows what he's doing. I just think that when the bullets start flying on a game day, one guy 1 foot away from where he needs to be, and there's a miscommunication, and the ball goes the other way, I think that is my concern.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I talked to John Ross, who missed the first couple of preseason games. He played in preseason game number 3. You know, and now this is a rookie that obviously hasn't faced the NFL. He goes, man, that speed of the game, it is there. It's real. You know, and the coaches are like, well, those guys had 2 weeks of practice under their belt and played a couple of preseason games. Not much, but you get out there and you get the dust and rust knocked off, and he hadn't. You know, and like I said, I know there's no question. Flacco's a pro's pro. You know, he's doing everything he can to get ready for the game, but not, exposing yourself and getting up to speed with that body rhythm and timing, everything we're talking about. It's going to be interesting. I mean, it probably affects everybody differently and at different rates like we're talking about. But at some point in time, I would think that first series or two, I'm not going to say he's overwhelmed, but I bet it's going to be like, yeah, boy, this is fast like I remember it. This thing, they're flying around out here. I think that's to be expected. I really do.
Well, 138 starts under his belt in a regular season. I think he knows what the bullets look like when they're flying, and I know what the chili looks like in Cincinnati, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on Sunday. Save me a bowl of chili there for my post-game indigestion. I hope it does not come with defeat. I've left Cincinnati with indigestion every time I've ever come, and sometimes it's actually the football, so.
I'll tell you, the Bengals have won 5 in a row here in Cincinnati at Paul Brown Stadium, so obviously they'd like to extend that an opening. First home opener for the Bengals since 2009.
I heard that earlier in the week. Man, they're always on the road week 1. Where the Reds soak up all the oxygen there and make sure they book that weekend?
Yeah, exactly. And then first time they've had 2 games in a row at home since 83. I mean, this is the first time that's happened since 1983. Unbelievable.
There's an anti-Cincinnati bias in the league offices, Dave. I mean, it's a conspiracy. They're out to get all of us except the Patriots, I think.
I hear you, bro.
All right, man. Hey, great having you on, as always. We'll see you on Sunday in Cincinnati. Thanks, Dave.
Look forward to it, Nestor. You're the best, man.
You got it, man. One of our defending champions around here, one of my favorite dudes, Dave Lapham in Cincinnati, Ohio. 10 years with the Cincinnati Bengals back in the 70s and 80s, and now 32 years as their color man in the radio booth along with Dan Horde. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. The kids call it podcasting these days. I just call it great conversations with awesome people who know a lot more than I know, and you can download the TuneIn Radio app and listen when you want, where you want, how you want. It's what we do and how we do it after a quarter of a century here at WNST.net. The morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That's all powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life, guaranteed. Last but never least, any breaking news happens first on the WNST Tech Service. That's powered up by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And, of course, Dennis Colatzos is here each and every Thursday with the SSV on WNST. If you're headed to Wembley and London on the Ravens trip 2 weeks from now, we are throwing a party on the Saturday before the game at the Fox at XL. It is a British pub with fish and chips and all that good stuff. I like the mushy peas myself. You could certainly hammer down a few pints if you wish. We're going to march at 252 down to the cable car and take the Emirates Air cable car. It's one of the most magnificent things you'll ever do, over the River Thames to the O2 Arena, where we will eat, drink, and be merry in jolly old London town. Nasty at WNST.net is the hotline to me 24 hours a day for any feedback, views, news, complaints, profanity, whatever, people send me all sorts of stuff. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and we always stream live on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.